Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today's video is all about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, and this is season 4 episode 9. We are one away from the finale and I'm so excited. But before we get into it, if you haven't watched season 4 episode 9 or up to that point, then do not watch this video unless you're okay with me talking about spoilers, because that's what's going to be going on. I'm going to be going over the episode and all the clues I found, and also talking about my theories, what's left of them, and also what I think is going to take place in season 5. Also, apologies if you can hear stuff in the background. The people next door are working on their house and there's just not really much I can do about it, but I'll try and take it out of the audio if I can. And before we get into it, if you like this kind of content, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good YouTube-y stuff. I am trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we are at 1,200, so, you know, keep on subscribing if you like this. Make sure to send it to a friend who also likes Only Murders in the Building, or if you like any of my other content. I like to talk about books and thrifting, fashion, and just like lifestyle stuff, so definitely stick around. So let's get into season 4, episode 9. Escape from Planet Klongo. So this is the first episode of the season that hasn't had to do with a movie that actually exists in real life. Every episode thus far has been named after a real movie that, you know, was filmed and you can go and watch yourself. Charles narrates this episode, and we see this flashback that 2 years ago, SAZZ was leaving set when she got an opportunity for Planet Ronkonkoma and ran into someone with her car, and we don't see their face, but this is the beginning of the episode and we're wondering, like, who is this person, because this is her stuntman prodigy that she's been teaching. So this is how she meets them, and they say they've never stunted. She asks if they've ever stunted before, and we assume the answer is no, since they're her prodigy. The trio arrive to visit Glenn and interrogate him and basically accuse him of murder, and they want to ask him what happened on Planet Ronkonkoma because they know that he is in the credits for the movie, so they believe that he was SAZZ's protege. And their plan is to lure Glenn out of his coma with beer and corned beef, which the nurse finds insulting because she's also Irish. And she's like, why? Because we're Irish, you think that like beer and corned beef is gonna get us to wake up? So the trio are denied access to see Glenn, so they end up going to sit in the waiting room, and Oliver gives Mabel the SAZZ beer because he says that only peasants drink beer, and she's like, well, I'll take it off your hands then. Charles offers to take Oliver out on with a night on the town to celebrate his wedding and also just like their friendship, and Oliver's like, amazing, like I'd love for you to throw me a bachelor party. So kind of like a little presumptuous on his end. We also see the concussion bartender shows up, and he tells the trio that like no one actually knows what happened on Project Ronkonkoma unless they were like on the set, and he wasn't there, so he's not sure, but he knows that there was like a lot of drama. And he also says that Glenn is not SAZZ's protege, but was actually brought in to replace the bad stunt double after a huge accident. And SAZZ actually had to blackball the person because they messed up so bad. So we are still like in the process of waiting to see the stuntman's face. We don't know who this person is, and that's kind of the tension of this episode. So we flash back, and SAZZ is giving her protege instructions on the fire scene, and she also pulls out her dad's flame-proof vest, which has this like silver tinsely, like these like strands on it. And so we're relatively sure that this is where the tinsel came from, that it's actually from this like flame retardant vest. And the question is, why would someone wear that vest while shooting SAZZ from the West Tower? Clearly they would have thought that they were going to be in some sort of like fire situation. So what is that about? Like, what's going on? This is very suspicious. The trio wonder how to get to Ron Howard because he is the director and was the director on the Project Ronkonkoma movie. And so Oliver says it's good news because he and Ron are very good friends, and they had off-menu spicy soup at this Chinese restaurant. And in all as usual, Charles and Mabel assume that Oliver is exaggerating his friendship with Ron because he tells these stories all the time. Oliver gives Charles instructions on his bachelor party and says it must be wands, whiskey, A-list celebrities, and naughty secret. And Charles goes about trying to plan the bachelor party. Mabel goes to see Bev Mellon because she decides that this is probably the trio's best chance at meeting Ron Howard. So when she walks into Bev's office, Bev goes on a tangent about the movie, how it's been like a huge pain in the ass, the brothers, sisters are driving her crazy, and Marshall keeps turning in script after script that seem to only get worse. Bev makes the most disgusting smoothie I've literally ever seen in my life with like Red Bull beef jerky sticks and like God knows what else. And finally, Mabel asks about the Ron Howard details, and Bev agrees to give them to her if she helps Marshall write the script and make it more like authentic to Mabel's character. Bev once again says that Marshall's pages are a big fat suckfest. So this is, once again, we're hearing about how bad of a writer Marshall is, which is bizarre because he's the screenwriter for this movie. And we go back to the trio being together. They're heading to escape from Planet Klongo because this is apparently Ron Howard's new movie and where he's located. And they try and figure out how to get on set and argue over who should do it. Charles is like, well, I'm Brazos and security people love Brazos, so I'll do it. And Oliver's like, well, I know Ron, so I'll do it. And Mabel's like, I'll do it because both of you don't know what you're doing. And so the security guard ends up turning them away, but luckily someone on set calls for backup actors and the trio immediately are like, yeah, we're here, and they race onto set. Mabel is really nervous to be a background actor and to act at all, and Oliver says that he's actually going to change his emergency contact to Loretta, which is a big deal because they're getting married, they're taking the next step in their relationship, and each member has to act to get on set, which is unusual because they thought they would just kind of like show up to be background actors, but they all, make it on. And Mabel's fear is like the silent terror kind, so her face is just kind of like frozen in fear because they have this discussion like, should we go big or should we go small? And Mabel still makes it even though she was actually only showing her fear of acting. We see that Glenn wakes up in the hospital and he sees an angel, and it's the nurse telling him to relax, and Glenn says he has to talk to the trio right away, and also he asks the nurse to be Mrs. Glenn Stubbins. So she's like, okay, like I'll go let them know that you're awake, and he also yells, can I get a room without the rats? So once again, this classic rat situation, which we've talked about possibly alluding to the trauma of Ben Glenroy being murdered with rat poison and then pushed down the elevator shaft. So we're still not sure about this whole like rat situation. We flash back to SAZZ and she's telling her protege to stop, drop, and roll after the fire scene and to stay down for at least 30 seconds because there's a possibility of them re-sparking. And then we go back to the trio and we see that Charles and Oliver are in this like crazy spandex suit. And they're like, Mabel, why don't you have to wear a crazy spandex suit? And she's like, well, you guys are aliens from Planet Klongo and I'm just a girl. And then right then Mabel gets a text saying that Glenn is officially awake. She races off the movie set to go to the hospital and talk to him. Then we have this whole scene where Charles and Oliver are basically fighting. Charles tells Oliver his bachelor idea for the party, and he says he wants to go get dogs with his dog and like go to this hot dog place and then go to Speakeasy, which I think sounds really cool, but Oliver pretty much shoots down and is like, that's not wands, that's not whiskey, A-list celebrities, and a naughty secret, so I don't want it. And Charles is really hurt by this. Then we go back to Glenn at the hospital and we see someone enter the room and we're like, oh good, like Mabel's there. Only to realize that it's not Mabel, and Glenn says, oh, it's you. Like he recognizes the person, but then we see the person smother him with a pillow and we know this is at least this is either the killer or at least like 50% of the killer team. Like, we don't know if it's more than one person, really. We go back to Oliver and Charles, and they are filming their Klongo scene on set, but they fight because Oliver is being mean about his bachelor party. And Charles basically tells Oliver that he is insufferable and that no one will come to his party because of it. And Ron Howard kicks them off set, and they basically like have to leave. And the funny thing is, right after that, someone's like, okay, Ron Howard's gonna come talk to you guys now and thank you for being on set. So they would have had the opportunity to talk to him, but because of their fighting, they end up not being able to meet him. Mabel arrives at the hospital and she hears that Glenn is dead. The nurse tells her that she called Glenn's people, like his emergency contact number, and as this is happening, there's this weird situation where we zoom in on the TV and it says that Nicky the Neck Cacimelio, the dry cleaning king of Brooklyn, is missing and apparently has ties to the Caputo crime family. And it says officials don't suspect foul play at this time. So like literally in the middle of this scene, all of a sudden we're taken out of it and told that there's this person who's missing. He is the dry cleaning king of Brooklyn and that he has crime family ties. And it's just very bizarre because it's out of the blue. And I think this is something that's going to come into play in season 5 and continue the story. There's going to be some sort of connection here. So the nurse tells Mabel that she called SAZZ because that's Glenn's emergency contact. But we know that the killer had SAZZ's phone, so that is how they were alerted that Glenn was awake, and that's why they came to kill him. We go back in time to SAZZ and her protege doing their scene. It goes perfectly until we hear this like yelling and something goes wrong and SAZZ screams, "Oh no, no, no!" And she like gets up and runs away. And then it cuts to Oliver and Charles having this heart-to-heart about Charles thinking that he and Oliver would grow old together, but now because Oliver is getting married and Loretta is his new like emergency contact, Charles feels like he's kind of third wheeling. And it's a really sweet and honest moment, and it makes you think like everyone deserves like a best friend like Charles and Oliver. Like they're not exactly perfect together, they have their quirks, they're silly and goofy, but like at the end of the day, like they're gonna grow old together. Like think about having a bestie to grow old with. Like, I don't know, just makes me, that's what we all want, a bestie to grow old with. So they make up, they decide to go to the Chinese place that Oliver went to when he met Ron Howard. And they get whiskey and they do a naughty secret where Charles moves Oliver's photo from behind this plant to like right in the center of the wall so everyone can see it. And Oliver asks Charles to be his best man and his life alert contact, which is very sweet. And then who comes in but Ron Howard, and he actually does recognize Oliver and he says, "Ollie," and then they like do the like hot soup motion that they did in the video. And so we learn that Ron Howard and Oliver actually are friends. This story is one that actually did happen. And Charles goes over to Ron Howard and he's like, "I loved it in Mayberry when you went down by the fishing hole." And I had no idea what this was or what this meant, but apparently this is a nod to the Andy Griffith Show, which Ron Howard actually worked on as an actor. It was a sitcom about Andy, who was a sheriff of the town and a widow, and Ron played his son, Opie. So it's just an interesting nod to like this older sitcom TV show. And it's also interesting that Ron Howard is an actor in it, but is playing a director in Only Murders in the Building. And we kind of saw that with this episode, and like, I don't want to go, obviously we all know who the protege is, so it's interesting that you have like a stunt person who wants to be a screenwriter, and then you have Ron Howard, who was an actor and is now a director. So it's kind of like people playing two different parts. It's just interesting. And then Marshall comes over to get Mabel's help on the script because Bev let him know that she was going to help him. And she's sad that Glenn is dead. She feels like she's failed. So then we go back to Oliver and Charles and Ron, and we learn about Project Ronkonkoma from Ron. And he says there was a big fire stunt that went smooth at first, but the stuntman got up to ask Ron to read his script, his like screenwriting, and then he reignited, resparked, and burned off Ron's eyebrows, which we see are fake, and he like peels them off, and we immediately think of Marshall, whose beard is fake because he can't grow facial hair. So Mabel ends up offering Marshall a beer. We go back to Ron saying that the stuntman's name is Rex Bailey and that the stuntman stole his shoes, which are the same shoes that our shooter was wearing, or our suspected shooter, and it has the same footprint and everything. And Ron Howard says, I always have a photo of people who are banned from my set. So he shows the photo of Rex Bailey, and of course, Rex Bailey is Marshall. So as Mabel is offering Marshall a beer and going into SAZZ's little beer case, she finds the Only Murders movie script, and it says written by SAZZ Pataki. And we see the olds, Charles and Oliver, have sent Mabel a text saying that Marshall is Rex Bailey and that he was SAZZ's disaster protege that she blackballed in the industry. And then we notice that her phone is next to Marshall, sitting next to Marshall on the bed, and he kind of sees it, and she says, Marshall, why is this script for Only Murders, why does it say that it's written by SAZZ Pataki? And then the screen goes black. So, sorry, that's my phone's reflection. So we see the screen go black, and we're like, oh my god, Mabel just literally confronted the murderer, right there in front of everyone. And we know, we flash back and we see that Marshall is the one who murdered Glenn, and we're tying all these knots together. So a lot of people have talked about this theory, and now it is confirmed. Marshall actually did steal SAZZ's script for the movie. He wanted to be a screenwriter, so he sent it off to Bev, and she approved it. He was going to go on pretending like it was his forever, and SAZZ must have found out that he stole it and that he had sold it to Bev, which is probably why she called Bev, saying that she had some really important information about the movie that they were shooting. And Bev thought it was negative information, but in reality it was just SAZZ being like, that's my work. And before she got the opportunity, not only to tell Charles that she'd written a movie about him and the podcast, but also to let him know that she was pretty sure someone stole it from her, she was killed. So it's pretty evident that that SAZZ was the intended murder victim, that Marshall, at least in part, helped to murder her. Possibly he was the shooter, because in past episodes he has talked about how he has 20/10 vision, really incredible vision, and I did mention that maybe that was a nod to him being the shooter, but that it felt a little bit obvious at the time. But maybe that is the suggestion here. That seems to be where we're going, that he wore the boots, had the tinsel vest, was the shooter, has great vision, and has a motive for wanting SAZZ dead. So the question is, did someone help him, and who is that person? So now we have to kind of figure out who would have been working with Marshall, because I really do feel like they haven't revealed everything yet. And obviously Marshall killed Glenn, but will there be another twist where Marshall's like, I never killed SAZZ? I mean, I do think that he had to do with SAZZ's murder. It seems pretty evident at this point. But the question is, who helped him? And so, we have our cast of characters. Right now, my best guess would be Bev, because she's so invested in the movie and in having the movie completed. We've already kind of covered the brothers, sisters. I don't think it was them. We've already kind of covered the actors. I don't think it was them. Is it possible that he was working with a Westie? Maybe. But I think right now my best guess is Bev Mellon. But I think one of the most interesting parts of this episode is that when Glenn is waking up from his coma, he sees the nurse and he says, "Are you an angel?" And I'm wondering if that is going to tie back to season 1, where we have Angel, who is the jewelry dealer that Tim Kono is trying to locate. And it was never really confirmed for us who Angel was. We have the Demuses, who had the account specifically under Teddy Demus's grandmother's name, Angel in English. So we know it's connected to them, but it was just an interesting callback. Are you an angel? And hearing that name again and wondering who is Angel? And does this have to do with those season 1 plot holes that we are still trying to dig through? Who wrote those notes? Who was interested in having the trio stop their podcast before it ever got started? Who didn't want them digging around about murders in the building? So that's why I'm kind of thinking maybe there is some sort of crime syndicate person, a Moriarty figure, And if you don't know what that means, Moriarty is the bad guy in Sherlock Holmes, and he kind of like pulls the strings of all the different murders and like crimes going on throughout the season. And so a lot of people have said, is there a Moriarty figure in Only Murders in the Building? Someone who is like the mastermind who is pulling the strings on the crimes happening around the building. So is it possible that Angel is our Moriarty figure, that this is the person who didn't want them digging into Tim Kono's murder in the first place because they didn't want to be found out? Did they write the notes? Did they poison Winnie? Because at this point, it seems like we're not going to figure out what the season 1 plot holes, like who did those things in this season. So it seems like the next season is going to be set up to focus on the season 1 plot holes and all of the murders that have happened thus far. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm also curious if it's going to be planned to be their last season because of the fact that like they're really wrapping everything up. It would be hard to continue with the authenticity of the show while also like wrapping up the original storyline that they clearly had. So does that mean that season 5 is going to be the last season, or are they going to keep making it? Are they going to go elsewhere with the story? I think I would be okay with season 5 being the last season just because of the fact that like I think when TV shows push past the original storyline that was built, and the original amount of seasons they intended to talk about those stories, it often kind of like falls off and isn't as good as it used to be because the writing just isn't there anymore. So if season 5 is the last season, like as long as it's a really good season and it wraps everything up for us, I would be really okay with that and pretty happy. But like, I do love the show, and if it continued past that, I'm not gonna be mad about it. But yeah, so that's kind of my theory for where this end of season is going and into next season. I think that in the 10th episode, we're going to find out that there is at least one other person helping Marshall. He doesn't seem smart enough to figure all this out on his own. And is that person Beth? Is it a Westie? Is it an actor? Obviously, we're about to find out. And I think that next season we'll dig into this crime syndicate that they mentioned in this episode, this Nicky the Neck, who is missing right now, who is the, dry cleaning king of Brooklyn. I think that next season is going to center on this like larger crime family atmosphere and how it all ties in to all the seasons that have happened so far and the season 1 missing pieces. And maybe there will be an Angel figure, a person who has been a Moriarty pulling all the strings. I think that would be really cool. And a lot of people have theorized that it's Howard or even one of the trio themselves. And I'm just excited to see where it goes. So yeah, I think that's all I've got for today's video. I'm so excited to see the 10th and final episode, and I will put a video out reviewing what I thought of the season, the episode itself, talking about possible clues for next season and what we're looking at. But I'm really curious to hear what you guys think the last episode of the season is going to be like. What other secrets are we going to uncover? I think it's really weird that Marshall was wearing the flame retardant vest while shooting SAZZ. Like he was wearing her father's flame-proof vest. It's just weird. Why would he wear that unless he was intending to go through some sort of like fire process? And if that's true, then is it possible that SAZZ is still alive? I've never been one to be on the train of the theory that SAZZ escaped and is still alive, is still living, because I really do think that she died in the incinerator. But the fact that Marcia was like wearing that vest, it just begs a lot of questions. Why? Why was he wearing that? Is SAZZ alive? Is she gonna pop out and be like, gotcha, had to go into hiding because of all this craziness? But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good YouTube stuff. And I will see you guys next week with another video. I love you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!